Hi, welcome to Bridging the Gap. I'm your host, Boston Miner, and today we are joined by a fan favorite, Nicole Detling. She was one of our hosts at the SelfCare Summit, and a lot of you really loved her. So today we get to hear more from her. And we are also joined by Braydon Coleman, one of our regional administrative directors and the chair of the SelfCare Task Force. All right. Nicole, welcome back. This is your second time.
Yeah.
It's been a couple months since the first one.
Yep.
Braydon, this is your first time?
First time.
First time.
And they put you on with me.
I know. I was like,
man, I'm sorry.
We're going to need some help on this one.
Today, I just want to talk about the Olympics. They just wrapped up in Paris, and you've worked with a lot of Olympians before.
Yeah.
You've gone to a lot of Olympics, and you've helped Olympians, play. And I know a lot of our listeners, or all of our listeners, aren't Olympic athletes, but there's some correlation to performing and working towards something for your entire life and trying to get your own personal gold medal, right?
Yep.
So I just want to hear some stories you have, anything like that.
Oh, man, that's like a wide open question.
I know,
How long is this podcast? Because I have a lot of stories.
However long you want. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if the cameras can see like this flag in front of us, right? I mean, pretty cool.
We'll show it after. Yeah, we'll show B-roll.
Yeah. So just for our listeners, we have this flag sitting in front of us. It's a USA Olympic flag with the rings. And I've carried this with me to all the Olympics that I've been to and had the athletes that I worked with there sign the flag, as well as numerous other athletes that I had met there. So we're kind of sitting in front of this, which is kind of cool, getting us into that Olympic feeling, Olympic experience. Cool. But yeah, so I've been working with Olympic athletes for about 24 years now, mostly Winter Olympics because we live in Salt Lake City and that's what we have here, breaking the fourth wall.
That eye contact,
right? And that's what we have here. So that's been a majority of what I've worked with is Winter Olympics. And that's what you'll see mostly on this flag. But then I also work with the U.S. para archery team. So they're heading over to Paris here in just a couple of weeks from when we're recording this podcast. So there will be 6 para Olympic archers. And I work with that team. And so that'll be really fun to watch them competing in Paris.
Yeah. And do the Paralympics happen after?
They do.
The main Olympics? Okay.
They do. And something people don't recognize is it's the exact same venues. Yeah. It's the exact same expectations. It's not that a lot of people think that the Paralympians might have easier routes in some way. And it's not. It's the exact same venues. It's the exact same expectations. And so it's pretty intense and really impressive in a lot of ways. So I really want to encourage everyone to watch the Paralympics if you get a chance, because it will blow your mind how amazing these athletes are.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm excited for the ones coming in Salt Lake.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? We get the Olympics back in 10 years, dude. 2034.
Yeah.
I can't. I'm already prepping for it. I'm already talking to people. I'm already, helping to promote the cause in some ways and hoping that I'll be able to be embedded with a team in 10 years that I'll be able to help them at a home games.
Yeah. Well, what's the process of helping an Olympic athlete perform at their highest level?
Gosh, great question. Not a simple answer.
Yeah.
But I do think that the answer can be interesting for everyone listening to this podcast too, because it's the same for all of us. In terms of thinking about each individual, what is it that you're shooting toward? What's your main goal? What's that big, hairy, audacious goal that you have out there? And what's it going to take for you to get from where you currently are to where you want to be? And what I do is help them bridge that gap. Bridging the gap. What do you know? I didn't even do that on purpose.
Whoa.
I didn't even do that on purpose. How cool is that, right?
That was
cool. That's right.
It's trademarked, so just be careful.
So it's basically like, how can we take you from, and that's my whole philosophy, is how can we meet you where you are and take you where you need to be? And then just figuring out for each person, what is that person's secret sauce that they need? Every single one of us in life, we have the same thing, right? We're where we are right now, and we want to be somewhere else in the future. We want to achieve something, accomplish something, even something as what might seem small, but is actually huge, like being a better parent, right? That's not an event that you work toward. That's something you work to become your entire life, right? But it's all the same in terms of, okay, where are you now? And what maybe might be holding you back right now? And how can we teach you some skills, different mindsets, different thought processes that would help you get to where you want to be?
Yeah.
So it's the same.
Yeah.
I think a big misconception is a lot of people think that Olympic athletes are special people, and they're not special people.
Yeah.
They're ordinary people, just like the rest of us,
Yeah.
who've worked really, really hard to develop special skills and special talents. And that's no different than us, right? Like, you can be elite at what you do, no matter what it is you do. It may not be in front of millions of people once every 4 years,
Right.
but we can all be elite at whatever it is that we do. If you think of a lot of the Olympians that I've worked with, they're just like us in terms of they've been bullied, they've had their hearts broken. Several of them have been diagnosed, on the spectrum somewhere. They've come from broken families or, poor homes or lower SES, or just didn't have the support that they needed, but they found a way to accomplish the thing that they really wanted to accomplish.
Yeah.
That's just like us.
Yeah, it is.
Right? Yeah. We're just not as public.
Yeah.
Right? Thank God. I couldn't imagine if, all of my training and everything that I did was in front of millions of people. I probably wouldn't be doing so well. Yeah.
When you go to the Olympics, how do you prepare? Like, I know the athletes need help, but like, talk about yourself.
Yeah, I love that question, because I think what a lot of people don't recognize is that it's the Olympic experience for the staff too, right? Because we all want to be there, and we've worked really hard at our jobs, whether we're coaches, mental performance coaches, athletic trainers, physical therapists, dietitians. Like, we've all worked really hard in our fields to go to the Olympics also. And so our preparation has to be dialed in and spot on as well as theirs. And so a lot of the preparation, it doesn't look the same, because maybe I'm not physically training the way a lot of these Olympians are, but you better believe I'm preparing myself. So for me, it would be, making sure that I know the athletes well that I'm going with. So I've developed a relationship with them. I never jump onto an Olympic team the year of. I have always wanted to work with a team a minimum of 2 to 3 years prior to the Olympics. So I'm really familiar with the athletes, with the staff, develop relationships, kind of know I'll be able to predict in that way where they might need extra help during the games. And so I'll spend a lot of time with them in advance, just really getting to know them. And I'm also researching new ideas, new skills, because the same thing isn't going to work for everyone, nor will it work with the same person every time necessarily. So I'm going with basically a bag of tricks. Right? What are some other things that might happen? And one of the things I've learned from having been to multiple Olympic Games is that there's always something unpredictable that you could never have prepared for. But if you're prepared that something unpredictable is going to happen, then when it does, you can kind of rein in the intensity of the emotions and the experiences that athlete or even a staff member might be feeling. So when I go, I'm not just there for the athletes, but for the staff too, who are also experiencing their own emotions at the Olympics. And so just being best prepared for that in every way that I can possibly think of. That's how I prepare. And then when I come home, I crash and I take care of myself.
That sounds like a lot of anxiety right there.
Yes.
Last time you talked about, you had 41 people that won medals.
Have won medals. At the Paralympics or the Olympic Games, 41 different athletes.
Very cool. I wanted to talk about the ones that maybe didn't. And what was the process like after? Because that's a lot of pressure and that's a lot of expectation. You work your whole life to get to that point and you don't get, the outcome that you wanted. How do you go from there? So
I will say that a lot of athletes that I've worked with never expected to win medals. They knew that they really weren't in contention, and going to the games and being their best, not just going to the games, but like doing the best they could. For a lot of them, that was their version of a medal, right? So not everyone goes expecting to win medals. So keep in mind too, these athletes are competing against the same athletes they're competing against at the Olympics, at World Cups and World Championships every year. So everyone kind of knows where they stand for some sports, especially. I think the hardest, there's two in my experience, and this is just speaking from my experience, there's two places that are the hardest places to earn. And the first one is fourth place, which is probably what most people would think of. And those fourth place athletes, I'll tell you, I usually gosh, in my experience, the ones that I've worked with, I've spent a lot of time with afterwards and just helping assess and evaluate and work through and experience. And what I always work to get them to eventually is, what are you proud of? Yeah. What did you accomplish? Instead of telling me what you didn't do and being upset about all the things that didn't happen for you, what can you feel proud of?
Yeah.
Celebrating the wins.
Exactly. Yeah. Celebrating the wins. Maybe it was, traditionally at the World Cups and World Championships, you've been getting 6th or 7th. Well, 4th is an improvement. Maybe it's not where you wanted to be. And it's okay. And I actually acknowledge that you didn't get what you wanted. But again, celebrate the small wins of what you did get. So great way to say that for sure. Yeah. And then the second one, this might surprise people. And I will say it does depend on the sport, and I'll explain that in a moment. But the second hardest, do you guys want to guess what that is? What would you guess?
Oh, I would say last.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Second hardest, second?
Yes.
Second. Yeah.
Second place. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why would you say that? Because whoever it is, they just won a silver medal.
Yeah. I mean, getting that close to being the top, no one's going to remember second place as much as first.
Right.
That's how I think, at least.
Yes. But, you're totally right. Yeah. And again, I think it's somewhat sport dependent. So if you think of sports that go head to head for a gold medal, so archery being a great example, right? I work with a para archery team, so this is an easy example for me to use. So these athletes are going head to head all the way up through to the medal round. So that means there are 2 athletes who are shooting against each other for the gold medal. That means the person who won the silver lost the gold. Lost the gold. And so I've heard those athletes refer to it as, it's the only medal you have to lose to win. And that's hard. I was right there. I had gold right there. And so it's funny to me, if you watch the podium celebrations at the end of the Olympics, you usually see like the happiest person is usually bronze, because they're like, I got on the podium, right? And I'm like, any sport, I usually see bronze is like crying and excited and happy.
Because like you were saying, they're competing for either third or nothing.
That's right. So, that's right. Yeah. And gold is the next happiest because they won gold, of course, right? And silver a lot of times is like,
close,
right? They're kind of like forcing the smile and trying to recognize they still want a medal, but it's so hard for the silver medalist. So that's something I've actually, I'm just going to say, this sounds weird. I don't know what terminology to use to not make it sound so bad. But I feel like that's one of the most interesting things to me, is to watch the medal ceremonies and watch how gold, silver, and bronze react to their medals. And I'm making a blanket statement, and that's not fair, because it's certainly not true of every sport or every person, but it's interesting to watch. So I don't know. Those are just some of the behind the scenes stuff at the games that maybe people don't recognize. Yeah.
I like how you're talking about just celebrating the small wins throughout the journey. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of similarities to, trying to compete in the Olympics and just trying to compete in life.
Yes.
So, we all have our own personal medals we're trying to get, and sometimes we don't get them. And so I think, it's important to just remind ourselves of our small wins.
Yeah. And say those can easily be overlooked, because you're shooting for that big goal, the kahuna, know, and everybody's like, oh, well, you did X, Y, Z to get there. And they're like, oh, that doesn't matter. And it's like, it does. It's those building blocks to get you where you want to be. Yeah. But people definitely overlook those a lot.
Yeah. And I think it really relates to life too, because as I was saying before, we, like, maybe I'm using the example of being a parent, is maybe we are working so hard to be the best parents that we can be, but there's no Olympics. There's no epitome. There's nothing you're working toward, because I can tell you, as a parent of a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old, it's not when they hit 18, they graduate from college, they're gone and you're done being a parent. That is a for life thing. And so it's something you're always working on. And that can sometimes feel really challenging. And I think that's true for a lot of people in their jobs. There's not necessarily something you're working toward, maybe a promotion or something like that. But then when you get it, you go right back to work. Yeah,
you're trying to master out your skills. You're just trying to, but you never really get there because you're still working on it. You're going to have those slips. You're going to have those, shouldn't have done that, but then you live and you learn. You fail fast.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that we're more like them than we think we are. Yeah. And our lives are more like them. And the things that we do every day, it's just, like I said, not as public or not as celebrated or, But the other thing too, is every single one of these Olympians are going to come home from the Olympics and they're going to go back to life. And somewhat unfortunate in our country. We don't continue to celebrate them.
Mm.
It's just, that was great. And then they come home and it's like, okay, what's next? What's on at the movie theater?
Yeah.
Anybody see Deadpool 3? Right?
No.
Right?
Before the wall
Like,
breaks.
yeah, right? Like that's what we do. And
Yeah.
so like they work so hard for so long and they have a moment of glory that ends up just being a moment of glory.
Yeah.
And I kind of struggle with that a little bit. They definitely struggle with that
Yeah.
quite a bit.
This is more of a personal question.
Mhm.
For a lot of these sports, they're not like very popular, like you were saying before.
Yeah.
So do they have like normal jobs
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of do this on the side, or how does that work?
So, excellent question. We try to be politically correct here.
Yeah.
We don't, as a country in general, we don't support financially our Olympians the way other countries do. Some of them have done so well that they have their own personal sponsors and they can just focus on training, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
But notice I said they have their own personal sponsors. They're not on salaries. They don't get paid to do this from Team USA. Like that's not how it works. But yet, if they want to become the best of the best and go on to win an Olympic medal, they spend a significant portion of their days training.
Yeah.
So when would they work? What kind of jobs would they have?
Yeah.
And in the past, they have had jobs through different companies. So like, I just as an example, the one that pops to my head, Home Depot had an Olympic training program. I don't think they still do, but they basically hired Olympians who could set their own schedules and work as much or as little, maybe more in the off season, whatever it might be to help support. But even then, they're still getting minimum wage. They're not making a living. So
Right.
I've actually worked with some athletes in the past who have made so little money, they're under the poverty line and they've lived on food stamps.
Wow.
Wow.
And that's sad
Yeah.
in a lot of ways that they don't really get that financial support. But talk about on the other side of that, how committed they are to their dream and to
Yeah.
accomplishing,
Mhm.
to be willing to live like that, right? Many of them will room together
Yeah.
to save money on housing and, various things like that. So they're really committed, dedicated, disciplined to their sport and making ends meet in untraditional ways. GoFundMe's, parents, friends of parents who are able to help out, little sponsorships here and there that don't really amount to much, but help them pay the bills. Yeah. It's kind of tough. It's not what people think it is.
I've always wondered that. I've always
Yeah.
thought about that.
Yeah. It's definitely not what people, not in USA. Other countries, we'll just say the Olympians in other countries do very well for
They do nice for
themselves.
themselves. Okay.
That is not the way it works in the United States, unfortunately.
Got it. You work with more than just Olympians though,
I
too,
do.
right?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So what, you just want like a list of who I work
just
with?
like what range of
Right.
people do you work with?
Yeah. So honestly, everything from I've worked with professional teams and athletes in the past. I mean, I was with Real Salt Lake for 3 years. I was with the Utah, our professional rugby team, which people probably don't know that we have, the Utah Warriors. Yeah, we have a professional rugby team here. I worked with them for 3 years, and I've had professional athletes in every sport, every major sport, definitely a lot of minor sports as well. I was with the University of Utah Athletic Department for 7 years, so I worked with all the teams up there, which is how I know Gabby, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then in my business, I've had as young as 10, 12-year-olds who just, want to shoot free throws better, want to hit the ball at the plate, whatever it might be. So my range is pretty broad. And then from a business perspective, I've done a lot of work with the federal government. I've done a lot of leadership training, resiliency training with the federal government. They tend to fly me to DC a few times a year to do trainings with them. And then I also work with a cybersecurity company, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So it's basically executive coaching, but it's mental performance coaching within a company with business leaders. And honestly, just like with Olympians, it's people who are just working to perform their best, whatever their performance is. So
Would you say that's the biggest similarity between all the kinds of people you work with?
yeah, dude, at the end of the day, we're all people and we're all just out there trying to do our best and live our best lives and figure out how to do that. And so that's where I've kind of found my niche is just, I don't necessarily have to understand what your performance is, but I do need to understand from you what your performance means to you and where are you not able to bridge that gap and how can I help you do that? And so teaching the skills necessary.
Perfect. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Sweet.
It's been really fun. It's been a really fun journey.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
A lot of networking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of want to go back into the self-care event. You were there. A lot of people loved you. Everyone gave you such great reviews.
That's so kind.
A lot of people want to hear more from you, so we do have a Q&A at the end of this.
Okay.
With questions.
Sure.
I do want to talk about like the backstory to the self-care. Braydon, can you talk about the why to the self-care?
Yeah, that's interesting because it was a lot.
Yeah.
So I think it was year of 22 is probably October. We were at Natalie's house for an offsite and she was like, well, we need someone to chair the self-care task force. And I'm like, oh, nobody's raising their hand. All right, I'll do it. Everybody was like, ooh, good luck. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, what does that mean? And so it was a team of 3 people. And Natalie really wanted to redo the vision of self-care and really take away the presenters to be more external. So they're getting the message. So it's not just somebody else telling you from your team, which I was like, that's a great idea. And also really to have more of a maintenance plan with it. Because at the end of the day, you can say, hey, go do X, Y, Z. And then you don't follow up with it. Nobody's going to do it. But so it was very intentional and it was very well planned and said, you guys got 2 years. Good luck. And we're like,
okay.
It was 2 years ago. Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it was 2 years, and then we met every single week, and then we're like, what are we meeting about? We don't know. We're just gonna start. So we just really started to kind of play around with what we originally had and make new domains and just really kind of tie it a lot back into what our team is seeing now, which really helped because like our team consisted of like Colton, he's our clinical director in Cedar City, and Harmony, who's our clinical director of Crossroads. So it was really good to kind of get their perspectives as well, because they're seeing the staff one-on-one. You know, they're able to be like, what do you need? And so they're having that direct level of like access to their direct line staff. And I'm like, ooh, we need that perspective because we can think, oh, well, I need X, Y, Z and we're good. No, somebody else does not need that. So that's a little bit of the backstory. And then we just went from there.
Can I cut in just for a minute?
Mm-hmm.
First of all, holy cow, that's a lot of work. And I bet people don't recognize that because you show up to an event and you're like, wow, that was amazing. But no one really thinks about what went into creating it. So
a lot of Monster Energy
to
drinks,
you,
and a lot of Red Bull, but we made it work.
But then the other thing that I think is absolutely amazing is that you went to the people who were going to be in the event and said, what do you need?
Yeah.
What would be helpful for you? So you didn't make the assumption that you just knew because you work here too.
Right.
Like you actually went to them and say, what's going to be most helpful? And that's a big task. So I just kudos.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well done.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, and we looked at the year prior and got that feedback and said, okay, this is what there was maybe, I don't know the statistic, but there was a handful of people who were at the original one we did in 21, I believe, is when we did it.
That's right. That was Park City, the 21 one?
20 was Park City. 21, I think, was when we did our other one. We've done multiple. I'm like, I can't keep track of them. But, it was really good to hear their feedback of like, well, I didn't like this, but I really like this. Or my team, they're not using the self-care app. Okay, well, why? Let's figure out the why. Well, it's too much. Okay, well, let's hone back then, So it really gave us all aspects to tweak because we already had a lot of it. It was tweaking and polishing.
Dude, this is amazing because so many companies will say they listen to their employees and make adjustments, but a lot of companies that I have worked with don't.
Yeah.
But you really do. And that's phenomenal. Yeah. Good for you.
We have to.
High five,
team.
bro. Yeah.
Always, our team does a lot of hard work. And so it's really looking at it from how can we retain them to be here? Because we know your job's hard. You never know what you're going to walk into. But if we can create that atmosphere and create something, we're going to do that. We're going to do the best we can because we can throw a dollar at it. What's that going to do? The problem's still there.
Yeah.
So let's look at the other problem.
Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah,
how many were on your committee?
We started with 3, and we grew to, I think, 15, by the time we were done. We added a lot of people because I can't do this by myself. Then our whole team kind of went up.
That's amazing. Yeah. Sorry, I totally took over.
No, you're totally good. Don't even worry about it. No.
I was just curious.
No, it's totally good. Well, I think the event just turned out so good. Like I was sitting in the back with the camera, listening to everything, and I took a lot of points away. I was interested to hear what you guys took away from it.
Yeah. There was a lot. I think planning too, I really had to take my mindset out and be like, hey, focus in. What is Nicole saying? Because you're not listening right now. Like, that's right. No, I really just kind of took away that at the end of the day, your job is still going to be there when you get back. So really have that work-life balance and don't be afraid to hone in on yourself. We want to put our, mask on before we help others, in those oxygen cruises on the airplane. But it's true. You got to take care of yourself because if you're just giving, where are you getting that support that you need? And that was really what I took away is don't forget about yourself.
Fantastic. Yeah. Mine. So a little caveat, a little side note. So I believe that when you go to these events, there is so much good stuff, but if you try to take everything away, you can't.
Yeah.
Right. But I also believe that you hear what you need to hear.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, right? Whether you're searching for it consciously or subconsciously, or it's just something that smacks you between the eyes and you're like, oh my gosh, that's right.
That's so true.
Right?
Yeah.
And so there was one line that stood out to me, and it was John Deloney in his first talk of the day. And I have it written down. I should have brought it so I could quote it verbatim. So I'm not going to quote it verbatim. But essentially what he said, and he even said it in passing, but it just hit me and it stuck with me. And it was something to the effect of, your value or your worth is not measured by a number, but by the people you love and the people who love you.
Yeah, I love that.
And I was just like, that's so true, right? I mean, we strive toward these things, the Olympics being this great example, right? We strive toward these things, but what does it all really mean if that Olympian wins a gold medal and then goes home and sits alone and never talks to anyone and never communicates and just sits there, right? Like, was that really what you wanted in life?
Right.
And so that one really stood out to me, and I've thought about it a few times since then, and it's helped me really spend some time appreciating more my family. Not that I didn't appreciate them to begin with, but just taking those extra moments for gratitude and love, and spending a few extra seconds on the hug when I get the hug from the kids, you know? And just, it's those things in life that I think that we all, that's what we should really be striving toward, are those relationships. And I think that's where we get a lot of our self-care and a lot of our fulfillment is through other people. Yeah. And so I know I certainly chased, when I was working on baby steps and stuff and chasing down that number and wanting to get to baby step 6. And it felt so amazing when I did, but it would have been so more meaningful if I hadn't had my family and the people that I love around me.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. What did you get? You don't get to get out of it.
Oh man.
You said you got stuff from it. Let's hear it.
I got 3 things.
Ooh, he's got 3.
1, you were a great host. You had great energy, and people really appreciated that. 2.
No, okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
John Deloney has quite a few pee stories. I figured out.
He does have a list.
He does quite a few.
I thought the same thing. I was like, how many stories are going to be about him peeing his pants somewhere?
I picked that up. So that's one thing. Yeah.
Okay. Wait, these are your takeaways?
I have the third one serious.
All right.
Third one serious. I promise.
Okay.
It was something John Deloney said. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like, choose who you let hurt you. Something like that.
Yeah.
It was along the lines of that. So it's like you give people power to actually affect, your mood, letting them hurt you. So I really like that. I didn't, like you were saying, you kind of hear what you need to hear.
Yeah.
I think that was one thing I just needed to hear.
Yeah.
And it just kind of hit me like a bus, And
isn't it funny? Because it's not like you went there, or at least I'm assuming you didn't go there thinking, man, a lot of people are hurting me lately. I hope I get something about that.
Yeah.
Right? Like that wasn't necessarily your thought process, but it's just for whatever reason, whether you have something specific going on in life or not, for whatever reason, that was something you needed to hear.
Yeah.
And so I think that this is probably something that I would encourage everyone in the company to do because it's been a few months now. So just think about, or go back to your notes, like what's the one takeaway now?
Yeah.
Maybe not then, but maybe go back and say, what's the one thing now that I got from this that I could be using in my life for wherever you are on your journey and wherever you're trying to get to. Yeah. I think that's something you can continue to do is go back to this amazing event and just what's the one thing that would help me now?
Yeah. I love that you touched on the notes portion because when we go to Entree every year, you're jotting down everything. You're like, I can use this, I can do this. And then you get back and you're like, what did I do?
Right. And you go back to life. You just go back to life.
Exactly. And I'm like, I know I got on a bowl and that's all I really remember,
We got video of that. Play the B-roll.
Smack my head after.
Maybe not. That's the other version of this. Depends on which one you want to play. But yeah, anyways, looking back on those, we just did a retreat for our team and we were like, what are we going to talk about? Because, we got their perspective, but we still had holes to fill and we pulled our notes out and we even made a list back then. We didn't know we were going to do this. OM offsite ideas. That's what we're going to talk about. And I was like, oh, And it goes back. It just, whenever it's right in your life, you can look back and be like, oh, I'm feeling this now. Now we're going to do it. You know? So,
awesome. Yeah, I think that does happen a lot. You just go back to life and you keep doing those things and you remember this great event, but if you don't consistently reflect on it, and I think I may have said this at the event. If not, I'm surprised because I say it all the time, but experience isn't the best teacher. Reflecting on experience is the best teacher. So reflect on the event. Go back every couple of months and pull out your notes or talk to one of your colleagues and just say, hey, you remember that event? Like, what's something that stands out to you? And maybe you didn't even hear that when it happened, but it's something that is helpful for you now.
Yeah.
So reflect on those experiences. And I feel like that's where we can get a lot of what we need in the moments that we might be looking for something.
Yeah. I love that.
I've never even heard that before. That's awesome. I really like that.
Thanks.
I like that.
Yeah, that's not mine. It's a quote of somebody else's. I don't remember who it is, but I say it a lot. So whoever it is, I'm giving you props from a distance because I don't know who originally said it.
Yeah. Well, I want to go into our Q&A now. We do have a couple questions from people who have worked here in our centers.
Great. Okay.
So
they sent these in for me to answer?
Yeah, we had the booth in the back.
Oh, yeah.
And so they just came in and wrote. So yeah, these are specifically for you. And Braydon, feel free to chime in too.
Yeah, thanks people for asking me questions.
Yeah. I'm wondering for those struggling with their own self-care, maybe that feels like their own Olympics, what kind of mindset or advice would you give someone so that they can prepare and aim for a gold medal every day, just like you did with the Olympic athletes?
So it does start with mindset. That's the number one thing to know. And I would say, just to simplify it for all of us, because I think this is something that we can all relate to. As humans, we are storytellers. And so we have a story about everything that happens in our lives, right? So I would challenge you to start with asking, what is your story? What story do you continually tell yourself? And then verify the accuracy. Is it actually accurate, or are you afraid that something that's going to happen? Are you trying to avoid something? Are you reliving a story from 10 years ago? So start with your story and then work to tell yourself a better story. And I'm just going to say better because we're all different people and I don't know what better looks like for each person. But what is it that you're working toward, and what's a story that can help you accomplish that? And that sounds really kind of philosophical, but if you think about it, it's like, if I gave an example, well, how many people have the story, my boss doesn't like me, or my clients, I have a very hard client, right? We can probably all relate to that, right? And so that's the story you keep telling yourself. Well, what's another version of the story that could also be true? Maybe this hard client doesn't feel that they are cared for in some way. So how can you change the way you are working with them, or the way you talk to them, or the way that you interact with them from the very beginning that could change their story of you, which then changes your relationship, and all of a sudden they're not so difficult anymore. Right? Because you're going to tell yourself a story when you walk in the door. Oh, great, I have that client today and they're so hard. That's setting you up for having a hard client that day. Why are you surprised that the client was hard? Right? Versus, okay, what's a different approach that I could take that could potentially help this client more? Or maybe my boss doesn't like me. It's not about my boss not liking me. Maybe my boss is going through something personally that I don't even know about, and they don't even know that they've interacted with me in a way that's maybe not the way I would prefer. So what's another story? Start with a different story when you go into those interactions and see how that changes the interaction. And then you can build on that and grow.
Got it. Nice.
I love that, because I mean, it's that mindset growth. You know, if you're going in there with the attitude of, oh, I have to do this, it's like, no, you get to change those verbiage of like, oh, I get to go to work today, and it's like, yep, I'm gonna cry, but I get to go cry at the bathroom, and that's okay, you know. But hey, I got Chipotle, you know, vibe, you know, changes.
But you're so right. I'm so sorry.
No, keep going.
I'm just the have to versus get to. I talk about this a lot when I do different talks for different groups. And initially you start sarcastically. Oh no, I get to go do that, right? But that sarcasm makes you laugh. And you're like, oh my gosh, I can't. But that right there, just that moment of levity brings a different attitude and energy toward the task.
I agree.
So even start sarcastically, that's okay. It can be helpful for you. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, Boston from Lehigh, that was a fantastic question. Thank you for sending that one in.
That's probably the best question I've ever had, ever.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, now for someone else, not me. In your experience, what are some effective ways organizations can support the mental health of their employees?
Yeah, that's a great question too. So I think there's a lot of different ways, but I think that it also depends on how an organization is set up, right? So I can give suggestions that may not make any sense here. So that's my little, caveat, my little side note. But I think there are things such as the recognition that people go through things and there are struggles. And so maybe having, I don't know, maybe you get one day a month where it's not like a PTO situation where it comes out of your account balance and all that kind of stuff, but you get a mental health day, right? One day a month. Doesn't matter what you go do. You just need a day, take a day. Giving some space for that. I think also having set up some kind of a counseling system where people can go to through your benefits system, where you can go get counseling external to the company, so that it can be as private as you need it to be. I think those kinds of things are helpful. I think doing events like this are phenomenal, and letting people know that you care about their health and then giving them the resources to do so. I love that this event wasn't just a one day, but there was an app created for it. You have these podcasts that keep referring back to it. You're continually doing things to spread that message. I think that stuff is necessary. And then I would also promote more, and I don't know how you're already doing this, so this may not make sense either, but I don't know if it's more ways to connect, but ways that people can continue to socially connect with the others that they're working with in more meaningful ways. I've worked with a lot of companies who do these events where people get together and they don't want to be there, and it feels mandatory and it's not helpful, but providing really going back to them, what would be helpful for you? What kind of event do you want to do? What would help you connect with your colleagues? Where do you think you're missing out? And then providing those opportunities for people to connect, I think, are some of the best ways that I've seen companies handle that. We know that telling people they have to collaborate doesn't actually engage collaboration. Connection is what encourages collaboration. So how can we get people to connect? And then I'm going to take this a little bit further. The research is really consistent on this. So I spend a lot of time in the resiliency literature. That's my main interest area when it comes to research. And I do a lot of talks on resiliency. I'm actually writing my second book right now on resiliency. So it's kind of my thing. But the research is really clear that the number one protective factor that can help you handle resiliency, which means you're handling struggles in life better, is connecting. It's other people. It's having the people around us who help us get through life, and it's us helping other people get through life that matters. So you have such a great opportunity, regardless of where your business is. You're working with people. If you can figure out ways to help people connect better on deeper levels, I think that's going to be really supportive for mental health going forward.
If someone doesn't have those deeper connections, how do they go get them? Yeah,
so it doesn't have to be at work, right? I mean, I'm kind of setting it up at work because it's an opportunity, but there are lots of ways. So the research is pretty clear that they have what's called strong ties and weak ties. So strong ties are like the 1 to 6. Most people, the average is 2, okay, of the people who are closest to you. And I always, when I talk about it, I say, these are the people who are going to help you bury the bodies. Okay. So like most people only have 1 or 2. So first of all, keep that in mind. You don't need 27. You need one person that you can totally be yourself with. You can cry, you can scream, you can vent, you can whatever, and connect with that person. But we also have what's called weak ties. And that's a research term. They're not weak like weak. It's more weak by history, duration, intensity of the relationship. So that might be a lot of your homies at work, right? You go to work and you see them every day. But if you didn't work here anymore, how many would you keep in touch with? You might initially think all of them. But life shows probably not. So those would be considered more weak ties. And we need both strong ties and weak ties. So recognizing that, like, even if you don't have someone, you're like, wow, I have nobody to help me bury the bodies. Weak ties can, if you have multiple weak ties, that can fill that gap. So maybe you have one person who really helps you through difficult times, like someone you can talk to. And you have someone else who's a great resource specifically for work with somebody who, a client who's similar. And maybe you go to somebody else because they you're in a wine club together and it's someone that you can be social with and go to those things with. So we can get that one person support from multiple people. So my recommendation is find people who like the things that you like. Get out of your house, go do the things that you like to do, and you will meet people there who can become weak ties at the least. And eventually those can all fill in for that strong tie.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. And surrounding yourself around people who I know how you said have same interests, but also that support you and that are your cheerleaders. Because if they're not doing that, they're kind of just sucking the air out of everything. It's I want somebody who's going to say, hey, you've got this. Go ahead. I know it's hard. It's going to be hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but I love you. Move forward.
Exactly.
And somebody just needs to hear that. Then they're like, all right, I'll go to the gym. All right, whatever, or whatever it may be. That's sometimes people just need that. Need that push.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, the next one is from a staff member in Cedar. They asked, do you ever encounter situations where you have to work harder due to systems that are potential barriers in your field? And how do you break through these blocks in a manner that promotes self-care and self-respect?
Really good question. I think that's a multi-part question. So I wish I could talk to that person. So reach out to me so we can talk more specifically, because I'm not sure I completely understand your question. I'm totally breaking the fourth. I'm Deadpooling this.
You're Deadpooling
it. So hopefully I'll answer this correctly that someone else can take from, but like systems that are in place, that's the part that I'm kind of struggling with. So I guess probably some of the easiest examples for me to pull out is being a woman in a male dominated field and going into, say, like work with a football team, right? High level football team. I'm the only female on the field. I'm the only female in the locker room. And there can definitely be some barriers there. So I would say it's more of knowing what you bring to the table, regardless of who you are, what system you're working in, you're bringing something to the table. You have a strength or you wouldn't be sitting in that room. You have something you can provide or you wouldn't have been asked to come into the room. So know what you can provide, and then figure out, maybe you don't like the system. Maybe you wish the system were different. That's not going to change it. So how can you best utilize that strength you're bringing in that environment? Right? So maybe it's working more efficiently. Maybe it's working more effectively. It could be a number of other things. Again, I'm not quite sure what system we're talking about. But figuring out how to make it work within the current confines. But it comes back to you, right? And then tell me the second part of that question.
Yeah. So how do you break through these blocks in a manner that promotes self-care and self-respect?
Self-care and self-respect. So self-respect, first of all, I know what I bring to the table, and it's taken me a while to get here. This wasn't at the beginning of my career, but now I'm confident enough to say, look, I know what I bring to the table, and you're either going to like it and appreciate it or you're not. And if you're not, I have enough self-respect that I can walk away. I would rather go work with people who want me here than people who don't want me here. So it's taken me a while to get there. But on the self-care piece, and this is a point I do want to make in this, because I think that there's a lot of people who think about self-care in a way of, I need a full day off and go to the spa for the whole day. Well, I don't have time to do that, right? They look at it as in you need this big chunk of time, which can be great, but that's not really how it works on a day-to-day basis. So I'm going to give a story. Gosh, this is a really long answer to your question, but I'm currently working with a professional runner who feels very burned out. Okay. We've all been there. We feel burnout in work. And so one of the things we talked about is she was saying, like, do you think that, if I took a week or two off, that it would help me? And I said, well, it depends, right? It'll probably help you for that week or two off. But if you come back to the exact same scenario that you had when you left, you're going to feel the exact way when you come back. Yeah. So let's figure out, how can you find little ways to fill your cup in your regular day-to-day, what you're doing everyday job, that then means you don't need that week or two off because you're filling your cup throughout the day. And I believe we can all find that. So what does that look like? Well, maybe it's a mani-pedi on the weekend, right? But maybe it's also you calendar in a 30-minute window in your schedule to just sit and read a book, or to go for a walk in the sunshine, Or get your favorite coffee on the way into work, and don't just drink it, but enjoy it. Right? I mean, those little things, I think, throughout days can really add up to taking care of ourselves. So those are some of those physical things, but I still want to go back to something I said at the summit when we were doing our Q&A, and I said it on the last podcast. So clearly I'm a big believer in this, and that's self-compassion. What are you saying to yourself every day? What is the story you're telling yourself about you? How are you talking to yourself when you make a mistake, when you feel overwhelmed, when you're stressed, when you're burned out? What are you saying to yourself? Are you saying, hey, yeah, it's really hard to feel this way, and I'm really sorry you feel this way, and so what are we going to do about it? What would help you right now? And then giving that to yourself? Or are you saying, you're such an idiot, you suck, you can't handle anything? Yeah. Right? That's not taking care of yourself. So from that mindset perspective, what story are you telling? What language are you using when you're talking to yourself? And then physically, like finding those tiny little things throughout a day that you enjoy. So I love being summer in Salt Lake right now. I've created this garden in my backyard to attract hummingbirds. And one of my favorite things is just to get up maybe 15 minutes early and get a cup of coffee and go sit out back and watch the hummingbirds. And I don't just do it. I absorb myself in it. I lose myself in it. I don't take my phone with me. I just enjoy those moments. And when I'm able to do that in the mornings, it really starts my day in a positive way.
Yeah.
Tiny. It's simple. It's not this massive thing I did, but those little things that fill your cup can really add up to taking care of yourself.
Yeah. You were saying the small things. I say to my mom every time I drink a Red Bull, I'm like, man, this makes my day better. I don't know what it is. And she's like, you're just addicted.
Oh.
So,
I mean,
Mom,
maybe.
If you're hearing this, just make sure you hear that. That's my small thing. So, I got one last question from someone from Lehigh. How do you integrate self-care into your routine, and what advice would you give to those struggling to prioritize it?
Yeah, so I think probably the same answer from the last question is just those little things every day. What are those little things that you can do? It doesn't have to be the same thing every day. But when you're doing it, it's not just another item on your checklist. It's something you truly experience. Absorb yourself in that moment, enjoy it, evaluate it, have gratitude for it. At the end of every day, I created my own 1 line a day gratitude journal. I couldn't find one that I really liked. I legitimately wanted it to be 1 line a day, so I would really focus in every day. And I have like 5 years under each date. So I can see like a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, what was my gratitude. And I'm about 1.5 years in, and it's really interesting. But I'm recognizing when I spend that 3 minutes at the end of every day, I end every day on a high. No matter what happened that day, no matter how bad it was, no matter how stressed I am, I sit down and maybe for 3 minutes, I'm thinking about, okay, but what was the best part of the day? And sometimes I have to search.
Yeah.
Other times I'm like, oh, we have 1 line. That's not enough. Right. But that's what I wanted it to be. Right. And I feel like when you just take those little moments throughout the day that you're just consistent with, you're disciplined, it doesn't take long. You do those things and it helps make the difficulties of the days better or less challenging is maybe a way to say that.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and I think it looks at when you're setting your goals, don't overwhelm yourself with too many, because I think people are like, oh, I want to do X, Y, Z, and I'm going to get it all done in 2 days. And you're like, let's be realistic, start with 1, break that down a little bit farther and work towards that 1. When you're just focusing on 1, it's like, that's hard in itself. So you're trying to focus on 5. You're not giving 100% to that 1,
Right.
So I think that's a big thing, and really just being intentional with your time and, 1% better every day. If you can just do, hey, I know I want to lose weight, so I think that it's going to be today. We're just going to do sugar-free today. That's the only step I'm going to change. I'm not going to go exercise. I'm not going to do this. Not there yet. I'm just going to change my drinking habits. And just by that, give it a couple weeks. Okay, now I've done that. Let's move to, now I'm going to start eating a little bit better. 1 meal a day. That's it. A little hard, No more Chipotle, Let's cut it down to maybe Costa Vida or something, But, So I think it's just changing that and breaking it down to what fits best for you. But don't follow a model or a template. It's just whatever works for you. Here's your bumper lanes. Stay within it and make it work.
Yeah, that's called habit stacking. If you look at the literature, so if you're looking for something, it's just habit stacking. You start with something really small. You improve some habit, change some habit, add a habit, or delete a habit. And then you get really good at that. You feel comfortable. And then you add one more. And it starts small. Yeah. When people have all this big stuff, it's often the start that stops them. I don't even know how to start on all this stuff, right? Exactly. I want to lose a lot of weight, but oh my gosh, that's so much weight. My lifestyle, right? Yeah, no. Yeah. So start small, one little decision at a time. And then here's another thing. At the end of the day, don't just, I got to do it again tomorrow. Before you get there, at least say, hey, look what I did today, right? And maybe you had some sugar, but you had one and it wasn't until like 6 o'clock. That's still a small win. Yeah. Dude, you did really awesome until 6. So rather than beating yourself up, so it goes back to that mindset and self-talk, rather than beating yourself up for that one sugar you had, you can say, okay, that's not what I wanted. Look how amazing I did until then. Yep, I made a little bit of a mistake, but tomorrow I get to try again. I don't have to try again. Tomorrow I get to do it again. Exactly. And tomorrow I'm going to make it happen. Right. Yeah. So if you get stuck on that one little mistake, this is anything in life, you get stuck on that one little mistake, it's going to take you down that rabbit hole of negativity, and you're probably going to not accomplish what you want to accomplish. Yeah. So acknowledge it and say, hey, I can do better, but you can't get stuck in that space. Yep.
That 1% better every day. It's crazy how it snowballs. That's something I've been trying to do recently, is just find a way to get 1% better. Not take huge leaps, just take it, one day at a time. It's crazy how it just snowballs, and you'll really see it when you don't think about it. And
we can bring that back to our Olympians too. Yeah. Right. They didn't go to the Olympics overnight. A lot of them started when they were younger, and it was every day. In fact, the Olympic motto, at least for Team USA anyway, is it's not every 4 years, it's every day. Right. We only see it every 4 years as fans, but they are working at it every single day. They're making choices at every meal, just like we are. They're choosing whether or not they're going to work out that day, just like we are. Right. We all choose what we put into our work every day, just like they do. Right. So it's very similar mindsets for them to get to the top and for us to get to the top. And the top for us really just means living my best life. Yeah. That's it. Whatever that looks like.
Well, that's all from me. I think that's a great place to end it. Do you guys have anything else?
Just take care of yourselves. You have a hard job, but don't make it harder on yourself. Be your cheerleader. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I will say one more thing. I do believe that people who are in any kind of a helping or service industry, when we're really focused on other people, we are the worst at taking care of ourselves. So all of you listening, you are not alone. But if you have such a big heart and such a kind soul to care for others, extend that same kindness and caring to yourself.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you. Braydon, Nicole, thank you guys so much for being here. You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Thanks. Right back at you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Bridging the Gap. If you need any more resources or information, go to utahbehaviorservices.com. If you want to collaborate with us, you can email us at bridgingthegap@utbs.co. Check us out on social media at Utah Behavior Services. You can also learn more about Dr. Nicole Detling and Headstrong Consulting at headstrongconsulting.com.